Every story leaves something behind. A whisper, a shadow, a question that was never answered. Here, we dig through the forgotten files, the unsolved mysteries, the chilling true crimes, and the horrors people wish had stayed buried. From haunted legends to real-life nightmares, every tale is pulled straight from the horror archives. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully, because once a story enters the horror archives, it never truly leaves.
Smart homes are supposed to make you feel safe. Everything automated, everything under control. But what happens when that control belongs to someone else? These next 3 stories were sent to me by people who learned that the hard way. And I'll warn you now, the last one is genuinely one of the most disturbing things I've ever read. And this first story is called The Thermostat That Learned. It was submitted by a man who moved into a new construction home and noticed that his smart thermostat seemed to know things about him that it shouldn't have been able to know. And the first thing I noticed was that the house was already warm when I got home. Not warm like the heat had been running, warm like someone had been living in it all day. I'd moved into a new build in a suburb outside of Raleigh about 6 months prior. One of those smart homes where everything connects to an app on your phone. Thermostat, door locks, lights, cameras, the whole nine. The builder had included it all as part of the package, and honestly, I loved it. I'm a single guy who works long hours in IT, and the idea of my house just handling itself was appealing. The thermostat was the thing I used most. It had a learning feature. It tracked when I was home, when I was away, what temperatures I preferred, and it built a schedule around my habits. After about 2 weeks, it had me figured out. It would cool down when I left for work and start warming the house 20 minutes before I typically got home. Seamless, except one Wednesday in November, I came home 2 hours early. Migraine, left the office around 3, and when I walked through the front door, the house was already at 72 degrees. My preferred evening temperature. The app confirmed it. The thermostat had adjusted at 2:38 p.m., almost exactly when I'd left the office. I figured it was a GPS thing. Maybe the system detected I was heading home and reacted. I didn't think much of it, but then it happened again. On a Saturday, I decided last minute to go grab lunch. I was gone maybe 40 minutes. When I came back, the thermostat had dropped to 65, my away temperature, and was climbing back up. 40 minutes, It had known I was gone and adjusted for a 40-minute absence. I checked the app history. The thermostat had logged the adjustment at the exact minute I'd pulled out of the driveway. Not based on occupancy sensors, not based on GPS. The system log showed a manual override. Someone had changed it. I called the smart home company. They told me it was likely the adaptive algorithm being overly aggressive. They offered to reset the learning data. I agreed. They wiped it remotely. For a few days, the thermostat behaved like it was brand new. Static schedule, no adjustments. Then, on the 4th day, I came home and the house was warm again. 72. I checked the app. Manual override at 4:51 p.m. I had left work at 4:50. I changed all my passwords that night, set up 2-factor authentication on everything. I even changed the Wi-Fi network name and password. The next morning I left for work, and I watched the app the entire drive. At exactly the moment I pulled into the office parking lot, the thermostat dropped to 65. Manual override. I called the company again. This time I got a senior technician. I explained everything. He was quiet for a long time, then asked me to check something. He told me to go into the device list on my network and count how many devices were connected. I had 11 smart devices in my house. The network showed 12. He told me the 12th device had been connected since before I'd moved in. Since before the house was sold, it was registered under the builder's network credentials, which had never been removed. Someone with those credentials had full access to every system in my home. The thermostat, the locks, the cameras. I asked how long they'd had access. He said he couldn't tell from his end, but when I checked the camera logs myself that night, I found that the interior cameras had been accessed remotely over 300 times in 6 months. Many of those access points were between midnight and 4 a.m. Someone had been watching me sleep for 6 months, and the thermostat adjustments weren't them tracking my habits. It was them letting me know. They already knew. And I still think about that story. The idea that someone was watching, and then started leaving little signs that they were, almost like they wanted to be noticed. That's a different kind of fear. And this next one is called the lock that unlocked itself. A man living alone in Denver started getting notifications that his smart lock was being opened in the middle of the night from his own phone, except he wasn't the one doing it. And I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of my front door closing, not opening, closing, like someone had just pulled it shut from the inside. I lived alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver. I'd upgraded to a smart lock about a year before this happened. Keyless entry with an auto lock feature. The door locked itself 60 seconds after being closed. I could also lock and unlock it from my phone, and I got a push notification every time the lock status changed. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand. There were 2 notifications I'd slept through. The first at 2:47 a.m. said the front door had been unlocked. The second at 2:48 said it had been opened. There was no notification that it had been locked again, which meant it was still unlocked. I sat in bed listening. My apartment wasn't big. From my bedroom, I could hear most of what happened in the living room and kitchen. I didn't hear anything. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. I got up slowly and grabbed a baseball bat I kept in the closet. I checked every room, every closet, behind the shower curtain, under the bed. Nobody was there. The front door was closed but unlocked, just like the app said. I locked it manually, checked it twice, and went back to bed. The next morning, I reviewed the lock history in the app. It showed the unlock event at 2:47 a.m. The method listed was app unlock, meaning someone had used the app on a phone to unlock my door in the middle of the night. But the only phone linked to the lock was mine. I checked one authorized device, my phone, and my phone had been on my nightstand all night. I called the lock company. They walked me through the security settings, confirmed only one device was authorized, and told me it was likely a software glitch, a ghost event. They pushed a firmware update and told me to monitor it. 3 nights later, it happened again. Unlock notification at 3:12 a.m. Door open notification at 3:12 a.m. This time I was awake. I was watching a movie in the living room. I heard the deadbolt pull back. I watched the door open about 6 inches. Then it stopped. I didn't move. I just stared at it. After maybe 10 seconds, the door slowly closed again. I ran to it and threw the manual deadbolt, the physical one that had nothing to do with the smart system. Then I checked the app. Same thing. App unlock. My device. I installed a cheap security camera the next day, pointed right at the door. A separate system from the lock. Different brand, different network. 2 nights of nothing. Then on the 3rd night, the camera triggered a motion alert at 2:55 a.m. I opened the footage immediately. The video showed my front door from the inside. The deadbolt turned on its own. The door opened inward, slowly, about a foot. The hallway outside was dark. For about 15 seconds, nothing happened. Then the door closed itself. But here's what made me move out. I rewound the footage and watched it again, frame by frame. When the door was open, there was a brief moment, maybe 2 frames, where the hallway light caught something. A hand on the inside of the door, not on the outside pulling it open. On the inside, fingers wrapped around the edge of the door, pulling it closed. Someone had been inside my apartment. They hadn't been breaking in. They'd been leaving. I checked the lock history going back as far as it would go. 11 months of data. The app unlocks had been happening 2 to 3 times a week, almost always between 2 and 4 a.m. For the entire time I'd had the lock. I moved out that weekend. I never found out who it was. The apartment management had no record of a spare key or code ever being issued, but someone had been coming and going from my apartment for almost a year while I slept. And based on the footage, they'd been in there with me that whole final night, waiting for me to fall asleep so they could leave. And they weren't breaking in. They were already inside. That detail stays with me. The fact that every time he heard the door, it wasn't someone arriving. It was someone who'd been there for hours. And this last story is the hardest one to narrate. It's called The Voice Assistant That Answered Someone Else. And I want to be upfront. This one involves a child. It was submitted by a father in Houston. And it is deeply unsettling. And my daughter asked the voice assistant who was standing in her room, and it answered her. We live in a 4-bedroom house in suburban Houston. My wife and I and our 2 kids. Lily is 7 and Marcus is 4. We have smart speakers in almost every room. The kitchen, the living room, the master bedroom, and one in the hallway between the kids' rooms. The kids use them mostly for music and bedtime stories. It's routine at this point. One evening in March, I was putting Marcus to bed when Lily came into the hallway looking confused. She said she'd asked the hallway speaker to play her sleep playlist, but it told her it was already talking to someone. She said she asked who, and it responded with something like, "A person in your room has an active session." I walked over to the hallway speaker and asked it to repeat the last interaction. It played back Lily's request and then its own response. She was right. It had said another device was in an active session in Lily's room, but there was no smart speaker in Lily's room. We'd never put one in there. I checked the app. Under active devices, it listed 5 speakers: kitchen, living room, master bedroom, hallway, and one labeled Lily's room. I had never set up a 5th device, neither had my wife. I tapped on it, and it showed the device had been active for 11 days. 11 days. I went into Lily's room. She was standing by the door behind me. I asked her if she'd heard anything from a speaker in her room before. She said sometimes at night she heard whispering, but thought it was her sleep stories playing quietly. I asked her what the whispering said. She told me it was just someone talking soft, and she couldn't hear the words. I searched the room. Under her bed, behind her bookshelf, in her closet. I found it in the bottom drawer of her dresser, underneath a pile of winter clothes. A small smart speaker, same brand as ours, factory white. It was plugged into the outlet behind the dresser using an extension cord that ran under the carpet. I had never seen this device before. I picked it up and it was warm, active. I opened the app and checked the device's activity log. It had been added to our network 11 days ago using our home Wi-Fi credentials. The setup had been completed at 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. I checked our family calendar. That was the night my wife and I had gone to bed early because Marcus was sick. The activity log showed voice interactions, dozens of them, most between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. The speaker had been used in listen mode. It had been recording ambient sound from my 7-year-old daughter's bedroom every single night for 11 days. But the log also showed outbound audio. Someone had been speaking through it. I played the interaction history. Most were too quiet to hear clearly. Low whispers, but one entry from 2 nights prior was louder. It was a voice I didn't recognize. A man's voice, calm, almost gentle. It said, "Go back to sleep, Lily. Everything is okay. I'm right here." My wife was already calling the police by the time I finished listening. We checked every window and door. Nothing was forced, but the smart lock on the back door showed an entry at 2:50 a.m. on that Tuesday 11 days earlier, and an exit at 3:22 a.m. Whoever it was had been inside our house for 32 minutes, long enough to connect to our Wi-Fi, set up the device, hide it in our daughter's dresser, and leave. The police never identified a suspect. Our security footage from that night had been deleted, not corrupted, deleted from within the app by an authorized user that the system listed as home admin, a profile that none of us created. We replaced every device in the house, changed every password, new locks, new cameras, new network. We did everything right. But 3 weeks later, I was checking the devices on our new system and found 6 connected. We only own 5. I haven't found the 6th one yet. And that's where his email ended. I followed up with him twice, but never got a response. I hope that family is safe. I really do. But that line, "I haven't found the 6th one yet," I can't stop thinking about it, because it means whoever's doing this, they came back, and they're still ahead of him. That's all for tonight. Stay safe, and maybe check how many devices are on your network.
And that's where tonight's file closes, but the archives are far from empty. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and join us as we uncover more horrors, mysteries, and true crimes hidden in the horror archives. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep listening, because you never know what story we'll uncover next.